The morning of January 15th, 1947, was quiet in Los Angeles. The winter sun hung pale in the sky as a young housewife named Betty Berzinger pushed her stroller along South Norton Avenue in the neighborhood of Leimert Park. She noticed something in a vacant lot ahead, something so starkly white against the dead grass that it looked out of place. At first glance, she thought it was a mannequin discarded from a department store, split into two halves. She slowed her pace, leaning closer. Then her breath caught in her throat. It was not a mannequin. It was a woman. The body had been severed cleanly at the waist. The two halves were placed deliberately, almost posed with the arms spread and the legs straight. The skin was so pale it looked drained of life, and in fact, it was every drop of blood gone. Her face bore a smile carved by someone else's hand. The mouth slit from ear to ear in a grotesque mockery of joy. Betty staggered back, stifling a scream so as not to frighten her child. She ran to a nearby house, begged to use the phone, and within minutes the police arrived. But they were not alone. In 1947 Los Angeles, news traveled faster than cars. Reporters swarmed the crime scene almost as soon as the police did, their flashbulbs popping, notebooks ready, hungry for headlines. The victim was soon identified. Elizabeth Short, 22 years old, originally from Massachusetts. To the world, she would soon be known as the Black Dahlia, a name born from her preference for dark clothing and a recently released film called The Blue Dahlia. Overnight, Elizabeth's brutal death became a sensation. But before she was a headline, Elizabeth was a girl chasing dreams. She grew up in Medford, Massachusetts, one of 5 daughters. Her father abandoned the family when she was young, faking his own suicide and leaving her mother to raise the children alone. Elizabeth had always been drawn to the world of film, to Hollywood's shining promise of beauty and fame. People described her as striking: black hair, porcelain skin, haunting green eyes, and though she had no steady job or home, she carried herself like someone destined for more. She wanted to be an actress, to be seen, to belong to something larger than her small, fractured beginnings. By the end of 1946, she was drifting through Los Angeles, surviving on borrowed rooms, brief romances, and the kindness of acquaintances. To men, she seemed glamorous, untouchable. To friends, she was fragile, lonely, forever searching for a break that never came. Her last known movements traced a strange path. On January 9th, she was in San Diego with Robert Red Manley, a married salesman infatuated with her. He drove her back to Los Angeles, dropping her at the Biltmore Hotel downtown. Elizabeth told him she was meeting her sister, but no such meeting happened. Staff recalled seeing her in the lobby that night, alone, waiting. Then she vanished into the shadows of the city. For 6 days, no one saw her again, until her body appeared in that empty lot. The crime scene was unlike anything the LAPD had ever seen. The body was washed clean, surgically precise in its mutilation. There was no blood, no dirt, no fingerprints. Whoever killed Elizabeth had taken their time. The bisection at the waist was done with medical knowledge, the kind taught in surgical schools, not by amateurs. Detectives Hansen and Brown, assigned to the case, immediately knew they were dealing with someone meticulous and someone cruel. The press devoured the story, spinning Elizabeth's life into lurid headlines. They painted her as a femme fatale, a woman of countless lovers, a dark beauty courting danger. In truth, Elizabeth was broke, often hungry, a young woman clinging to a dream she couldn't reach. But truth mattered little to newspapers eager to sell copies. They gave her the nickname Black Dahlia, and it stuck. Then came the letters. Within a week of the murder, the Los Angeles Examiner received an envelope. Inside were Elizabeth's personal belongings, her birth certificate, photographs, business cards, and an address book. Everything had been cleaned with gasoline to remove fingerprints. The envelope bore a handwritten note signed the Black Dahlia Avenger. The killer was mocking them, daring them to catch him. More letters followed, each one taunting, each one deepening the city's fear. Detectives worked furiously. They interviewed over 150 suspects. Red Manley was interrogated for days, but his story held, and he was eventually cleared. The brutality of the crime pointed investigators towards someone with surgical skill. One name loomed large: Dr. George Hodel, a wealthy physician with a sinister reputation. Hodel was known for his fascination with death, his abuse of women, and his powerful connections. He lived not far from where Elizabeth's body was found. Years later, his own son, a retired LAPD detective, would present evidence suggesting Hodel was the killer. But in 1947, the police lacked the proof, and he slipped away, shielded perhaps by influence, perhaps by corruption. Other suspects emerged. Soldiers Elizabeth had dated, strangers with violent pasts. Some believe she was caught in the web of Hollywood predators who promised fame but delivered ruin. Rumors spread of a sex ring, of mob involvement, of jealous lovers. But none of it solidified. Every lead dissolved into smoke. Meanwhile, Los Angeles itself was changing. The Black Dahlia case became more than a murder. It was a reflection of the city, a place of shimmering lights in dark alleys, where dreams lured the innocent and chewed them up. Elizabeth was one of many young women who had come west for stardom and found only shadows. The investigation dragged on, growing colder by the day. The killer's trail disappeared into silence. By spring, newspapers had turned to news scandals, new crimes. Elizabeth's face faded from front pages, though never from the nightmares of those who had seen her body. But there was one final twist. Whispered in bars, muttered by policemen off duty, suspected by reporters who dug too deep. Some believe the LAPD knew who killed Elizabeth Short, but could not or would not prosecute. Perhaps the man was too powerful, too connected. Perhaps the department itself was compromised. Evidence went missing. Files disappeared. Questions were buried. The truth, if it was ever known, was smothered by the city's own need to protect itself. Decades later, new investigators, authors, and even family members of suspects would revisit the case. They would uncover chilling connections, suggest conspiracies, and present confessions. Yet none brought certainty. The Black Dahlia's murder remains unsolved, a permanent scar on Los Angeles history. And yet, behind the myth, there was still a woman. Elizabeth Short was not just a victim or headline. She was a daughter, a dreamer, someone who longed for love and recognition. Her murder turned her into a symbol, but her life was quieter, gentler. She wanted to be a star. She wanted to be remembered. In a way, she was, though never as she hoped. 78 years later, her name still carries weight. The photographs of her smiling, hopeful face stand in sharp contrast to the horror of her end. The brutality of her death eclipsed the softness of her life. But the tragedy of the Black Dahlia is not only the cruelty of her killer. It is also the way the city consumed her, first in life, then in death, until nothing remained but legend. And in Los Angeles, on quiet nights, the legend still whispers. A young woman in a black dress, walking through the neon haze, searching for her place in the world, only to vanish into its shadows. A mannequin in a field that wasn't a mannequin at all. A smile cut into silence. A case that will never let go. The Black Dahlia remains unsolved. And perhaps that is why the story still haunts us. Because somewhere in that silence is the truth we will never know. Even now, the case remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. New theories appear every few years. Books, documentaries, even supposed confessions, but none have ever brought real closure. Some point to Dr. George Hodel as the most likely suspect, citing his medical expertise, disturbing private life, and the fact that he was later investigated for other crimes. Others believe Elizabeth fell prey to the darker side of Hollywood, lured by men who promised her fame but left her only tragedy. And still others whisper that the truth was buried long ago, hidden by corruption, sealed in files that may never be opened. What makes the Black Dahlia so haunting is not only the brutality of the crime, but the silence that followed. A young woman with dreams of stardom was reduced to a spectacle, her life overshadowed by the gruesome details of her death. She was more than the photographs, more than the headlines. She was Elizabeth Short, a daughter, a friend, a dreamer who wanted to be seen. And perhaps that is the greatest tragedy of all, that we may never know who took her life or why. The killer has remained a ghost for nearly 8 decades, and with each passing year, the chance of solving the case fades further into history. But the Black Dahlia endures. Her story lingers in Los Angeles, in the empty lot where her body was found, in the photographs that capture her smile, and in the unanswered questions that refuse to die. So I'll leave you with this. Do you believe the Black Dahlia's killer was someone powerful enough to escape justice? Or was it simply a crime lost time? Comment your thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you think.